My first console was the Atari 2600, then Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64. I still have Switch at home, play on the PC. At work, we have a PS5. If you started our company and you are in a role where you relate to the product, or especially as a data analyst, you just have to play the game for at least 5 days and write a report about like, hey, it was your first time user experience and so on. And that's, for me, the question is, do I want to sit next to this person for 8-9 hours? And I don't know if you can help me with that.
We are live on the Objective Hiring Show. Today we have Felix. Felix, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, Tim.
It is absolutely our pleasure to have you on the show. And where I normally like to start the episode is just to hear a little bit about our guest, just so our audience can start to build up a picture of who they're listening to today.
Yes, it's a pleasure. So my name is Felix Sander. I'm a director of business intelligence, data infrastructure, and finance for Whow Games. Whow Games is a video gaming company from Hamburg, and we are a 100% subsidiary of the Azerion Group, which is very active in the edtech market. I'm now with Whow Games for 3 years. But before that, I've been working also in the field of data science as a team lead for Xing recruiting. It's like it's German LinkedIn sometimes being referred to. So there for 4 years. And before that, I was also working for another video game company, also in the field of data for more than 5 years. So overall, speak about like 12, 13 years of data industry.
Nice intro. And the first question I have actually is, do you play games yourself? Do you get into these games?
Yes. I mean, there's a difference in, would I play this if I wouldn't work for the company, or if it's like for market research purposes. So some games is definitely a no, but yes, I since a kid, my first console was the Atari 2600, then Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, everything. Like I still have the Switch at home, play on the PC. At work, we have a PS5. So yeah, gaming is getting less with family, but still it's there and always has been.
And of your company's games, is there one that you particularly like and play a little bit?
So I mean, I think from all the games I've worked on, I'm not working for that company anymore, but what I think I've played the most in private was Drakensang Online. Because it's it's an action role play game. I like these types of genre. I'm a big fan of Diablo 2 as well. I really love Diablo 2 Resurrected when it came out. These types of games I also like to play in personal. But now we are also very active in this field of it's called pure social casino. So you have like the slots and these type of games, which I'm also from professional perspective playing. But it's I see the fun in it as well.
Is it one of those? I wonder if it's working for a gaming company. Can you get away with playing games at work? Is there sort of like, I'm just doing some user testing, doing some research, and trying to figure out the tracking?
You're getting in trouble if you're not doing it.
Okay.
So if you have too little experience, and especially if you're working for the product team, and you are not playing the product, you don't know what's important for the player, what their motivation is. You do not understand it, and also you are not looking at the data, how the user behaves. Then it's actually, so we encourage gaming a lot.
Yes, and that is actually a perfect segue onto a discussion around candidates and maybe some mistakes that they make in the hiring process and maybe in work in general. Because I feel like, particularly in the data profession, there's maybe a kind of set of candidates who are almost sometimes a little bit dismissive of the domain, almost not interested in the actual users or the money or the domain or the problem of the customer, and then maybe slightly fixated on just the technical aspects of doing the analytics and data science. And it's surely to their disadvantage as a candidate to have that mindset, because they're unable to really be as valuable to the company as they could be if they had kind of more empathy. Have you seen that yourself?
Yes, a lot, a lot. And basically, this is also one of the KO criterias. I mean, for me, I do not expect to know the full company history, like especially if you are in the first round. Yeah, you do not know if it's the right fitting candidate and so on. You just basically have seen the CV. But to have a general understanding of like, okay, what are they actually selling? What's the value they're bringing to their customer? What kind of products do they have? That's the kind of minimum interest I would expect from every candidate. And I've seen like very, very talented, and on paper they have been really good. They're working for big companies, well known. And when asked like, hey, what do you know about the company? And then, oh, you're doing this and that. Oh, no, we are actually doing something completely different. And yeah, you could basically, it also happened that I stopped the interview at those points because I also have usually a lot of questions also about like, hey, how would you approach this situation and so on. And if they even know what you're selling, then you cannot have this kind of conversation.
I was suddenly reminded actually of myself and one of my first jobs that I had as a commercial analyst with a business here in Australia that's one of the two large car parking duopolies, two large car parking companies. It's a bit of a duopoly here. And at the start of my career, I was probably especially introverted and especially interested in the spreadsheet and the data and not necessarily other things. And so I can remember one of the CEOs of this company, they were joint CEOs, which is unusual, but they were brothers. And he was talking to my manager about me. And he kind of, I think his perception might have been I was just, some nerd in front of the computer and not really getting involved enough. This is like within my first week. And he yelled, hey, has he been into the car parks yet? And she said, no, he's doing that next week. And so one of the first things they got me to do is just to go into 10, 15 different car parks, which sounds pretty boring and tedious, but it's amazing how much you'll learn because I suddenly learned about, some car parks have license plate recognition and others don't. Some, this is 10 years ago now, some still had a manual cashier, so a person you paid the money to, right? Some had mainly business contracts, people who are paying monthly as part of their business plan. Like that was most of the car park. Others were casual, people coming in maybe for a few hours each day. And then once I started to see this, then the numbers made a lot more sense because I was looking at these reports, looking at the data, like, oh, okay, now I get the difference between a casual and a perm. And then I could think forward to then how to forecast things. And it made it so much clearer. And it's not something I would have voluntarily done myself because it just kind of sounds a bit tedious and boring. But it was such an important lesson to really get that domain knowledge to be able to understand the context.
Yeah, I totally get your previous CEO, and actually we do something similar. So if you start at our company and you are in a role where you relate to the product, or especially in as a data analyst, you just have to play the game for at least 5 days and write a report about like, hey, what was your first time user experience and so on. And afterwards, you are being introduced to all the dashboards and all the data we have because as you mentioned, it makes much, much more sense than afterwards.
Yes. And coming to think of it now, pretty much everyone who we've hired into our company, as part of the hiring process, as you can imagine, they used our product to do a skills assessment and interview. So that was always a nice thing that at least we know they've used our product once as a candidate, once they come into the interview and suddenly they start to see what we're trying to do and the point of it, which is, I think, a nice thing that we've managed to do. What about when it comes to the interview then? So once the candidates are actually in the interview, so some obviously haven't done their research because they might not even know what your company does. That's pretty.
Yeah, but then it usually ends quite fast. So yeah.
But are there other more common mistakes that you would see candidates make, or other common reasons why they wouldn't succeed in the interview?
Well, I mean, the first thing is like, yeah, getting to know the product and the company at least a bit, because then you can talk about practical exercises, and then of course here your skill set plays a big role. How do you approach a problem? what can you make out of this data? For example, in an interview, we also often generate fake data, which is to have really good fake data for interview. It's also not so easy. So I spent a couple of days in creating a meaningful data set, which is not too large, but also very good for the company. Doesn't include anything because we also have GDPR and stuff like that, which is good that we have it, but it just makes like creating a realistic data set for this purpose very hard. But yeah, we have this kind of questions then. And it depends a bit on the position and the seniority level, but we either give them the data set in advance and just ask open questions like, what can you make out of this? Or I just hand them over a piece of paper with the beginning of the table and, hey, what do you see? Of course, documentation is missing as always, but when you think about our products, what do you think you see? What can you calculate out of these things? What kind of business questions can you answer? And if they get this connect and really, show that they are able to generate insights, to answer questions from this data, because that's in the end what matters. And no one, I mean, yeah, of course, you need it as well. Like, hey, how many daily active users did we add to get? How is the trend and so on? But if you do not understand the why behind it, you're a person that is creating dashboard, but not helping the business to grow, which is in the end something I think every data analyst should strive forward to.
And so I wonder if one of the kind of like red flags you might be looking for is a lack of proactiveness in their thinking, a lack of maybe also curiosity in actually understanding the why behind the data. Is that part of?
Or basically, I often refer to it as business literacy, because you can have the hard skill set and you can be a very good, even data scientist, be an expert in SQL, R, Python, visualization, Tableau, R Shiny. What else is there in the market? Just to name a few. But if you are perfect in all these kind of things, but you are not able to communicate to your stakeholders, understand what they really need from you, and support them in making decisions and do the right things, then yeah, that is something. And also like this product knowledge we have talked about, I'm often referring to this as business literacy. If I see that a candidate doesn't have this, or I have the feeling that they can achieve this, then it's usually a KO criteria for me.
And I'm really interested in thinking about like where does the gap here come from? Because this is such a common thing that's reported. Is it that the, I don't know, the degrees or the training is overly fixated on technical skills, and you would do a boot camp and your perception of being a data scientist would be, oh, I write SQL and Python and do Titanic modeling or something, right? Is there just, they're not even taught this, or is it more like there's just some weird mindset where they have the wrong perception about what their job really is? Like, your job is not to make a dashboard; it's to help us make money. You know what I mean? Like, where does the gap come from? Is what I'm trying to ask.
Maybe both, and I'd even add a third one, because it's also part of the fun. If you're going in that direction, I see amazing dashboards in Tableau Public and so on. And even I'm sometimes sad on my own that I have less time or not creating dashboards at all anymore in my role. So when I have the time and taking over an ad hoc task, then it's really fun to do that. And if like creating requirements and discussing these dashboards with your stakeholders that maybe do not have the same level of data literacy as the data analyst, because I mean, in Germany, you need, I don't know, a year to get a driving license, but your stakeholder should get your dashboard or your insights or your analysis directly after they've seen it for the first time. And if they're not not working as a team for multiple months or even years, you do not have this understanding yet. And that is it's a tough job to do, to explain this and basically get your stakeholders on eye level to talk about this dashboard, about the data, about the insights, to make the most meaningful out of it. And also to one of the items you've mentioned about the focus on the learning part. There are very good courses you can take on the internet, awesome YouTube videos, a lot of libraries you can use. So, but to be honest, if I think about it, I don't know if I've seen a course teaching business literacy. Maybe I think there's this one book I really like this head first data analysis, where they all say like, hey, they really start in the book, like, try to understand what your CEO or your stakeholder really wants from you. I really like that a lot. But that is something which is, I think, being overlooked quite often. So it's maybe not focused, and it's maybe not so fun if you're really someone that likes to program, likes to create dashboards and so on. It's you're maybe not the person for that, but yeah, at some point it's part of the job, but it's an important part of the job.
What I was saying was the last business I worked for, this is now 6 or 7 years ago, had a Udemy business subscription. So everyone in the company could access basically any Udemy course. And I got really, really into the Udemy courses. And I remember seeing the dashboard that they shared with us. And I was like the leader in the company by about 5 times. Like I'd done way, way, way more than anyone else. But how much of that did I really learn and retain? And so much of it was like different technical skills, Python, this, machine learning, SQL, I don't know, UX, like it was the full stack of different things. But really, I'm not sure any of that was going to, at the margin, add a lot to my career skills or add a lot to my salary, because I clearly had deficits in other places that were maybe not as obviously easily fixable, maybe kind of softer skills, stakeholder management, stuff that doesn't give you maybe the dopamine hit of just doing another Python course, but is actually really important. Is it a mindset shift then that we would need, or candidates, people with, a skill shortage on the soft side needs to think just like, you need to focus on this stuff, even though it's hard and difficult and maybe subjective, like you're going to do yourself a lot more in your career by focusing on those things?
I mean, for me, it's definitely a big part to fulfill this role. Very good. So if you want to advance and have a strong career in the field of analytics, that you need to learn this. And if you think, oh, I don't like to do this, it's not part of me, then you maybe should think about taking a different career path. If it's more like, okay, I like to program in Python, then a programming career is more, maybe more suitable to you. Especially like discussing the requirements. Hey, what do you really want from me? How can I support you? Is this what I wanted? And then you do the dashboard, and then you get the first change request because we all get them. Like, hey, why was this not part of the initial requirement? Was I missing something? Did I not fully understand your requirements, and so on? And I said this is a big part of the job. And if you're a really good data analyst, you're also very good at that part.
One idea I've been playing with recently is, so ChatGPT, Claude, one of the leading use cases of these large language models is coding itself. And I think all humans, particularly in the West, connect their identity with their job quite a lot. Like if you introduce someone and say, hey, like, what's your name? What do you do? Would be probably the second question. They say, I am an X, I am a whatever, accountant, I'm a software engineer. And I wonder if this is going to be a real problem, because if you are a software engineer, you're a coder. And so I feel like a lot of engineers, a lot of data engineers would have their identity wrapped up in actually literally writing the code rather than delivering business value. So again, do we need some kind of mindset shift to not focus on how you're doing it, but more like the value of what you're providing?
I mean, we encourage everyone in the company to use these kind of technologies, because if you're not, you're falling behind. So if you do not already have this mindset shift, you are already behind. And yeah, your competitors will stomp you to the ground. So and also I think it's a great technology we are currently learning how to use. And I see it everywhere that also you can have, let's say, if you have a very small business intelligence team, it's maybe just one person. It's basically your very cheap companion who can help you to give you feedback on your queries. Like, oh, do I double the data in my SQL? Can you please double check that for me? Because if you do not know how to ask the right questions, if you do not know what you want to achieve, if you cannot double check the code, for example, in Python, if you're not able to double check that, they will definitely give you some wrong scripts. I mean, it's a great technology, but still, you have to adapt it a lot. But for example, the last use case I had was to create something. Also tried out ChatGPT, but I think the same works also with the other large language models. Took me like 4 hours to create the final result. But I think if I would have to write this script on my own, it would have taken me a week, and I would have needed to ask at least 2 colleagues who are better in math than I am, because there were parts of the script where I was like, oh, that's something, maybe I need to go back to my high school books and read about it again to be able to write the script. So it's for me a great companion to have. I think it can increase the seniority by someone, let's say, who's on a mid-level, to make him even more comparable to a senior level, because they just give you ideas. They often do not give you the perfect solution from scratch. So you also have to work with your with your virtual colleague. But it's definitely, it's for me became a must to work with.
Yeah, I feel like it's a great leverage tool where it's multiplying on your current skill set. So, if I gave Claude to my 6-year-old nephew, he's probably not going to get a job as a software engineer anytime soon. He's pretty adorable, but I don't think he's going to get hired. Okay. But if you give that to a really skilled software engineer, oh my God, they're now suddenly they could be a 5x or a 10xer because they have this incredible groundbreaking technology where you're almost only bounded by your imagination and how you could use it to help you, I think.
But not only a coder, also like the artist. You can be a very great artist and so on. And with how is it called? The one which is on Discord, which for creating the graphics, Midjourney, I think it's called. We are also using this, and we have very, very talented artists, and their results are not better because they have always been very, very good, but they just have like a higher output and a higher frequency. And so it's not always because same as a coder. If you're already a good coder and you can already achieve what you want to do and deliver very good results, it can just speed up your process.
Are there any bits of your day-to-day life where you found yourself using Claude or ChatGPT to kind of solve everyday problems?
Maybe not everyday problems, because I'm usually in the meetings where we discuss the problems, get everything on the table, and make the decision. But it's more like, I really like to do bullet points. And as it's a language model and it's made for talking, if I need the proper text out of my bullet points, would be like a day-to-day thing. Or like I'm not a big fan of writing business cards. Like, sorry for everyone that ever received a business card from me, like, hey, congratulations, Merry Christmas, and so on. Try to give them a personal touch, but these are like the day-to-day problems. I have to admit that I'm also using these kind of models, but it's fun to work with because they give you also some nice idea I wouldn't have been even thinking about.
One thing I've been using ChatGPT a lot for recently is actually language learning. It's a really great tutor. I'm learning a bit of Italian at the moment. And again, it's almost like you're just limited by your imagination. I can get it to, on the video mode, just have a look at the page that I'm learning and quickly quiz me on some of the words. in Italian to English, English to Spanish, Spanish to Italian, whatever. Even coming up with like mnemonics for words, like ways to remember words. It's like it's almost unbounded and it's free, which is kind of staggering. I think there's just going to be so many amazing applications, including probably in hiring, I hope, in the next couple of years, some kind of AI based hiring. Have you started to use any kind of large language model or other type of AI in recruitment? Have you seen candidates use them on the other side?
Actually, I didn't check. That's a good point. I haven't checked the if the candidates used it, but I'd be totally fine with it because in the end, how they behave in the interview, how they approach the problems, and so on during the process, that wouldn't change my perception of the candidates. And just having an AI helping them on the CV. So in contrast, I can encourage it to do so, and I wouldn't. Yeah, I would think it's a good thing because why not? I mean, CVs are usually type of standardized thing. You can make them look nice, and it's even nicer for me to read. And as an HR department, I think it's like one thing for the people managers. For example, when it comes to the job description, a large language model can help you just to write a nicer job description, which is more on point and makes it easier for you to find the right candidate. And I still remember it like 5-6 years ago. You're usually going to the job boards asking for the similar position. Then oh yeah, that's the kind of job description I really like. I just copy a bit here and there, and then you're fine tuning and so on. But that took a couple of hours. So you like for a proper job description, it takes a while to do so. And now you basically, because that's in the end what the language model is doing, they have this stuff crawled for you, so you do not have to look it up on your own, and then you can just fine tune it a bit here and there. So that's I think a very good use case for the HR department. But then, I as I've worked for the companies that does the recruiting tools, so and they are basically providing services where in the background you also have an AI running. So even if you don't know or not what's behind the back, but there is definitely something running. And for example, if a recruiter wants to approach a candidate via job platform, they get this type of help, like, hey, they're screening the candidate's CVs, they're checking the location and so on. And then I can approach you. Hey, Tim, good afternoon, because you're in a different time zone and the machine knows that. And I hope you had a sunny day yesterday, because the weather information is public information. So the machine does that. So it's basically a creativity boost also in the conversation starters for the recruiters, where these type of tools help.
I feel like one of the big upsides could be to make hiring more objective and less biased, especially at the screening stage, because I've seen numerous different studies from different countries that have shown, by applying en masse to thousands of different roles with resumes where they just changed the name. So in Australia, they did one of like Anglo-Saxon versus Chinese names. I think I've seen something in Germany with like Turkish versus German names and callback rates. And they've shown that there is just rife discrimination with certain groups in different countries. And I think in theory, a good AI large language model could do that resume versus job description matching in a more consistent, objective way. So I'm really excited for that. But is there any kind of downsides you're thinking about? Any risks when it comes to using AI that?
I mean, if you have, I think it's a really valid point. And for me, that's also one of the struggles. I personally also had it in the process, this unconscious bias, I think it's called. Because even if you do not want it, it happens. It just happens. It's naturally. Like if a person looks similar to you, if they have a name which is not so hard to read and so on, you just do it. And so, for example, one of the things I do is I check the resumes twice, which I want to sort out. And I only compare, like, for example, the skills. I try to avoid looking at the picture, at the name, and so on. And then you sometimes also, feel what is called ertappt, that you feel, I don't know if it's trapped, but that you made a decision that you initially wanted to sort out this candidate, but in the end you were just like, why? This maybe it was this because of the name, something which brought to your attention in your mind. In the end, you don't know, but I think this is a very good use case. But then on the other hand, it also depends on how then the model is being trained. Because if the model does the same mistakes as humans do, then it doesn't help you at all. And so also in the model itself, you can have this bias because in the end it's being trained from the data that was generated by the humans before, and it's a human thing. We try to avoid that. Some people do it more, some less, but I think it would be a great fix if you are able to have such a tool.
Yes, and the consistency, I think, could be a big improvement. And I am reminded of an experiment we conducted a couple of years ago, actually, where we wanted to kind of understand the process of resume screening and what we thought was going to be some inconsistency. And so we hired, I think it was 7 different recruiters, and gave all of them 500 resumes for an opening with our company. And we also gave them the job description for that role. And we said to 7 of them independently, they didn't know about each other. We said, hey, like, we're too busy. Can you just shortlist resumes for this role that we've gotten so we can choose the ones to interview? And so we gave that to them. Behind the scenes, though, that we didn't share with them, we actually had all of those candidates' test scores on our platform, a skills evaluation customized for that role. And it was fascinating to see a couple of things. So one was the recruiters all came back with completely different shortlists. I think there was only one candidate who got selected or shortlisted by more than 2 recruiters. It was just like so random. Some recruiters selected 3 people, some selected 50. It was just such a hodgepodge.
Oh, 50. That's a short list.
And then also there was almost like a negative correlation between their actual skills test performance and whether or not they were going to be shortlisted on the resume. So some of the people who scored best didn't get shortlisted by anyone. And so it was a real eye-opener for us to really see how inconsistent it is. And so, for example, if you did some experiment where you applied for the same job 10 times, I reckon you'd probably be shortlisted once and rejected 9 times. Or if someone else did it, you might be shortlisted 3 times and rejected 7 times. Like it's so unpredictable because it's just down to who was doing the screening and how long they spent on it. And I don't know about you, but if I've just manually reviewed 200 resumes, the 200th, I'm going to be pretty bored by the 200th. I want this to stop.
I have to admit, also with the technology from the past, let's say 5 to 10 years, how the applicant tracking systems evolved over time, that you can like standardize CVs and so on. That is at least helping me a lot. Like, for example, there are some applicant tracking systems I've used. I've been worked together with them as colleagues. So here's the examples. Prescreen is one of the products I've been working with. It gets much easier. So for example, it's not like you have a big pile of CVs which were sent over via post and you have to manually screen them and so on and so on. So I wouldn't say it's fundamentally broken, but there's always room for optimization, but it just got much better already.
Yes. And so we're talking about AI in CV screening. What about the interview itself? Of course, it's inevitable we'll have AI interviewers, but I wonder if an intermediate step will be like, I don't know, some kind of AI assistant interviewer. someone is there to at least, do the transcription, the summary, maybe like pre-fill a candidate scorecard and say, oh, this is what I thought. What do you think, Felix? This is my suggestions. Something like that might be coming.
Um, I have had some tests before, also for other roles I was applying for and so on, or I was even starting in, and they did some tests before and so on. But I think the stuff we've talked before are more meaningful, because I think an important part is often being forgotten, and then your skill set doesn't even matter that much. And that's, for me, the question is, do I want to sit next to this person for 8-9 hours? And I think in AI, I don't know if it can help me with that. But there's, for me, like, I usually think about three things when looking for a candidate, or I'm checking for a candidate. Like, and that's the first thing. Like, when you get to know this person, like, do I want to sit for 8-9 hours next to this guy? And for Tim, yeah, first perception, so passed. I think we can have a nice chat, because you also have this, or I have a problem in the daily business, I'm a very good mood or not so good moods today. You're just shouting something over the table. Hey, do you remember how to did this? Do you remember where this table is, and so on? And it's usually, these kind of discussions that make your work life just more fun. And if you do not have this, like, I have colleagues, I would say I'm an interested person, and the one likes cycling a lot. The other one, chess and board games and this kind of stuff. One is an ice hockey coach and so on. It's just when you enter the office, and it's like, hey, how's it going? How did your team made it on the weekend and so on? It's just like, it's also a big part of the work life, is this personal connection. And then, I mean, you can be a very good data analyst, but if you just sit there, do your stuff, and not like part of the stuff. I mean, if the rest is perfect, I think I can still deal with it, because necessarily we do not have to be the best friends, but it's maybe harder to work with than with the others, where you can have just a casual chat. So that's the worst. That's not the worst. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, do I think this person is able to do the job? And that's, again, we've touched this, where these assessments, where the AI can help. Maybe I do not have to put the work into creating the fake data set, because I can rely on scores. I can rely on tests. But also, I think for me, like, for example, if you have Tableau Public, or you have a public GitHub account, like the last developer we hired, he's having a public GitHub account. And then also in the interview, you can discuss this hobby project, but it's really, really nice to discuss, because then you also see like the skills, and also where this person is really, really motivated to do it. And the last thing is then, and I think this is very hard to teach someone, is really the the motivation, and that someone really burns for it, for this kind of jobs. And I think you cannot teach this. This person can be really, really nice, but I think I've read this also on LinkedIn somewhere. Someone wrote, it's like, if someone needs 3 meetings to start to work on the solution for a problem, then there is an underlying issue. And that's something I would also look out for, especially like in the probation period, because usually it's like, hey, we need to solve this. Have you seen this? And they're like, yeah, I'm on it. And in the next couple of days or even hours, you will get an update. Hey, this is what I found. Yeah, this is, I think, what we need to do. This is what we can check next. Or for me, it's even more important than the skill set itself. Because if someone already has the skill set, but is really missing this third part of the motivation, of the fire to solve something, because if they're lacking the skills, they will teach themselves, or even like just ask the large language model, like, hey, how do I do this? And maybe be wrong, but then if you have a good people manager, they will find the issue and say like, yeah, great idea. It's unfortunately wrong, but let's fix it together. And then we have the nice result.
Yes, but if they don't have, as you said, the fire in their belly, then Oh my God. How you can't fix that because that's completely on them to find their own motivation. Uh, I guess the question is, how then do you uncover that in the interview? How would you uncover particularly motivated or demotivated people in that interview process?
I mean, usually I try to ask, yeah, business questions that are very practical. And then we had it before with the product knowledge and the company knowledge, which is basically the foundation to be able to have this kind of discussions. So I think if you approach them with real life problems, like, okay, this is what we did, this is the situation, how would you approach it, how do you deal with that, how do you come up with a solution, and then you get into this kind of conversation, and then you ask them also questions like, hey, now your stakeholders accuses you of like having the wrong analysis, wrong data, the stuff which also happens in real life. Like what do you do then? And then, yeah, with those kind of questions about really stuff that can happen on a day-to-day basis. Also, sometimes not like the positive things, but also the criticism you have to work with. That's always a good discussion, which you can have also about the motivation.
What about, is there some sense of also just trying to look for someone who's generally hardworking and doing a lot of stuff? So I don't know, you know, they're doing a triathlon on the weekend. They've got, they're raising some kids. They're involved in their local church. I don't know, whatever. If they just seem like they get shit done, would that correlate, do you think, to generally being motivated at work? Or
Not necessarily. I mean, I've seen people training for an Ironman, and I've seen them. It's a really really great achievement. I have tons of respect for that. Um, however, I mean, also these people, they have to be some kind of efficient, because that doesn't help me if someone is just working long hours, but then maybe this person needs training and focusing on the right things. Maybe this person is overwhelmed by stakeholders asking them tons and tons of questions because, for example, we had this, having proper requirements is tough. And if you didn't do this before, then you maybe have to constantly rework your what you were trying to achieve, and then there are things which can lead to working overtime and so on, which wouldn't be needed if you would just like focus on the right thing, understanding the stakeholders' issue properly, having the business literacy, having the product understanding, which could like reduce your working time to the normal amount and achieving the same things or even more.
we've covered off quite a lot of ground already today, and I've asked you a lot of questions. If you had the opportunity to ask our next guest on this show a question about hiring, what would you choose to ask them?
Yeah, it's good question. I think at the moment the world is really changing a lot, and I mean we have a difference in politics, but also with AI becoming larger and larger. I would ask them, like, is it, or also in Germany we have a recession at the moment, so we have some economic change. We have more and more elderly people, and during these times, in general, does it make you hiring harder or easier? And how do you deal with that? That would be, I think, a discussion I'd love to have with someone.
That's a great question, and yeah, I'll level that at a guest next week. What are your first thoughts about this? Like, if you compare hiring now compared to, I don't know, 2021 peak COVID, very low unemployment, lots of free cash, low interest rates. There's obviously a employer-driven market now. How do you evaluate it?
At the moment, at the right moment, it's really, for as an employer, it's becoming easier because of recession. Also in video game industry, we have a market where a lot of companies consolidate and so on. So there's a lot of talent out there at the moment. I mean, it's still to really find the right candidate which fits for you in your position and so on. It's still not easy. But if I compare it to like at peak times, very low unemployment rates. I mean, we do not have the super large unemployment rates at the moment, but it's just like, there are also less job descriptions out and so on. So it's at least in Germany, I don't know if it's the same in all regions, but at least for Germany, I think it's getting tougher to stand out for potential candidates at the moment. That's for me the sad truth for everyone that is looking for a new job at the moment.
Yes, yes, and that's a consistent pattern I'm hearing in North America and Australia as well. And it actually got me thinking about if I were applying for a job now, how would I go about that? I feel like I would not even focus that much at all on LinkedIn or platforms like that, and I would really try to think about my network and how could I get like a warm introduction to a company. Is that how you'd approach it as well?
I'd say yes. Maybe not only. I mean, you can still, if you see a job description that where you think, okay, that's just me, still apply for it. You can also be successful without being in the network. But I'd say, especially in this peak times where it was really hard to find someone, also like if you just publish to your to a job board where you like there's nothing coming in, maybe some CVs that do not match the requirements at all. That's also normal that you get them. But at that times, I think 50% of the candidates I hired in the previous company came from because someone knew them and thought they were good, or I knew them, they were part of my network and so on. And you just call them like, hey, do you want to work together again? And they're like, yeah, all right. What do you offer me? Is it good? Let's have some fun again. Yeah, that like having the network, especially if you have some years of experience, that definitely helps. Yeah.
Yes, yes, 100%. The power of networks, I feel like even more powerful now, as you say, in this kind of challenging candidate market and one where there's lots of applicants with ChatGPT written resumes that kind of look the same, being able to leverage your network.
But I don't mind if the CVs look the same. To be honest, I'm if I have the system to standardize them anyway, like remove the picture and so on, just focus on the skill set and so on to not have this kind of bias. So I'd even appreciate it if like CVs would be standardized.
Yes, yes. I would leave listeners with just one tip. I remember a book I read years ago, and the title sticks in my mind. It was "Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty." In other words, get your network built early. You don't want to suddenly be out of a job and need to build a network from scratch. So the earlier you can do that, the better. Plan for the long run, and it will definitely pay off. Felix, it's been a great conversation today. We've covered off a lot of different ground. We've gone all over the shop, and it's been really fascinating and great to hear your thoughts and insights. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.